If you want to stay up to date with all current hip hop events and releases, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications to become part of this community. So, the other day, I came across this article on Genius that actually talked about how Lil Baby's My Turn was the most listened to album of 2020. And it even beat artists like Taylor Swift and other big artists that you would expect, to be up there higher than Lil Baby. Now, one thing this also talks about is how Lil Baby only moved 40,000 units in traditional album sales. So out of the 2.6 million streams that the album got, which of course also take into account, stuff like videos, and they kind of calculate it all together to produce this number of 2.63 million equivalent album units. But this goes to further show how this generation is heavily reliant on streams. And the thing I actually wanted to get into here is the list of the most listened to albums in 2020, which they list a little bit further down here. And I just wanted to go over each record a little bit, of course focusing on the ones that are hip-hop related, because as you can see, most of them are, which is unsurprising because that is obviously, the most popular genre of music in the world right now. So the whole thing with the Lil Baby, beating Taylor Swift by in album units moved, but having moved considerably less traditional albums. There's also a list down here where it lists the traditional sales of records, and Taylor Swift's Folklore sold 1.3 million in traditional album sales, while as I mentioned earlier, while Lil Baby's My Turn only moved 40,000, but it still outperformed Taylor Swift's Folklore in total. So yeah, My Turn is obviously not even on here, but we're not going to focus too much on this. As you can see, this is not totally, but this is completely a new mixed list than the one up here. But this really represents what people listened to the most last year. Starting off, of course, Lil Baby's My Turn is at number one with 2.632 million units, or representative album sales, which of course are different to calculate in times of streaming and in times of so many different ways of consuming music. But that was the most popular album of 2020, which I'm really excited about because Lil Baby is, of course, very special to me. I'm a huge Baby fan, as you know, if you've been watching the channel for a while. And I really like that this last year was very successful for him. He also got named the Artist of the Year by the Apple Music Awards and stuff like that. So yeah, my opinion on Baby. You know that I think this album well deserved this number one spot. I'm still surprised that people like it that much, but yeah, this is a great platform he's built for himself. At number two, as I've said earlier, Taylor Swift's Folklore, which of course was, for me, for my perception of what was going on in 2020, that was the album that that created the most buzz, and that was probably the one of the biggest albums to release. But as I said, got outperformed by Lil Baby. So I've listened to the album, great record. So I also love that she's getting the recognition still this far into her career. But of course it's not, on this channel we mostly talk about hip hop, so I'm just gonna move on real quick, not focus too much time on that. Pop Smoke, Shoot for the Stars, Aim for the Moon, his first and last probably posthumous release, that released a couple of months after his passing. Rest in peace, right here. And that was a great record too. One thing that I'm really surprised by, or that I really found funny seeing, is that you had like 2-3 songs that were popping when it first came out. We had The Woo, For the Night, and Got It On Me probably. But then over the months after the release, when you had already thought the album to have died down in buzz, we had tracks like Hello, or what was the one with Lil TJ? We had What You Know About Love. We had Mood Swings too. That was the one that I was looking for. So yeah, I'm surprised that this album had this much staying power in the popular mainstream. So yeah, I also think it's great that Pop got the attention he deserved, although, of course, you could argue, like 50 Cent did with the Grammys, that this attention is only because of his passing, which, of course, plays a big factor, but still. I love that he was getting the attention in 2020, and yeah, 2.2 million sales in a year is considerable. Like, that's really good. So, yeah. Next up, we have The Weeknd After Hours, as I've talked about in my last live stream, which, by the way, tune in every Sunday at 2 p.m. EST, which I think is one of the best records that I've only now, over the past 2-3 weeks, have been discovering or rediscovering after having initially listened to it when it first dropped in March of last year. Such a great record. I was really surprised going back that this was this great and that I hadn't realized it earlier. So this is very well deserved on here. And I believe that, it should have probably sold more, because I believe After Hours is more of an art piece than, for example, My Turn is. Not to discredit Lil Baby, as I've said, huge fan, but yeah. Of course, it didn't get nominated for a Grammy, which, many people were upset about, but shout out The Weeknd for this. Next up, we have Juice WRLD's Legends Never Die with 1.9 million albums sold. And this was actually something I was surprised by. I was surprised that Juice didn't sell more than Pop Smoke or The Weeknd. But yeah, this was a huge release, of course. And, many people have been looking forward to this. I think this is one of the best posthumous records, together, of course, with Pop Smoke. This year was generally just from like a very rough point of view, or like roughly summarizing it, this year was not too bad in terms of posthumous releases. We've seen worse, I always take XXXTentacion as an example. But yeah, I was really of course this was going to be on here because Juice was a very popular and a very culturally influential artist over the past 2 to 3 years before his passing. Rest in peace. So yeah, I wasn't surprised to see this. What I was surprised, though, was the one coming up next, which was Post Malone's Hollywood Bleeding, with almost, we have 1.99 and we have 1.89, so it's like about 100,000 that it was that the difference was. But what's very important to mention is that this album released in, I believe, September or October. I believe it was September, though. It was definitely September of the year before, so 2019. And if you look up here, this data we have here is from the MRC, and it ranged from January 3rd, 2020 to December 31st. So this album did so well that it actually almost beat a huge release like Juice WRLD's Legends Never Die the year after it was actually released, which is very big. Of course, the album had very successful singles on there, and it was very, Post Malone is quite a big artist, saying this humbly. So, of course, this was going to be a big record, but for it to be this successful, I was actually pretty surprised. Also, considering that it outsold one of the most hyped up and anticipated releases of this year, which was Lil Uzi Vert's Eternal Atake. Which is coming in at number 7 with 1.86 million albums released. So this record, to me, initially it was actually disappointing, I have to be honest, but that was only because I was also caught up in the hype leading up to it. So now looking back on it, soberly and like catching it with a fresh mind, this was actually not a bad record at all. So yeah, this also made sense to me that this was going to be on here. What's a little bit less surprising than the Post Malone one maybe is Roddy Ricch's Please Excuse Me for Being Antisocial, which dropped in December of 2020. So, we don't have the first week numbers for it in here, for example. But this is also a very well-deserved placement on here. It had a huge single with the box, and yeah, it was generally a an influential record in 2020. So yeah, I like seeing this on here. So that makes sense. I was expecting this to be on here as well, mainly because of the box. Then place 9 and 10 are Harry Styles and Luke Combs, which I've listened to parts of their records, but I haven't in depth, reviewed them or even, went into them as deeply as I have into the hip hop albums. So I can't touch on those as much, and I think you're also more interested in the hip hop ones, so that's why I went over those more in depth. But yeah, as I said, you can see here, despite dominating streaming, Baby only sold 40,000. What do y'all think about that? I'm definitely going to be dropping a video on that too, talking a bit more about this and how the generational shift in music consumption has changed. So, yeah, let me know what you think about these 10 most listened to albums of 2020 and which albums you were expecting to be on here, which one you were surprised that they were on here, and what you're looking forward to in 2021. Maybe we can figure out what that list is going to look like. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. If you watched this video to the end and liked it, and you want to stay up to date with all current hip-hop events and releases, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, hit that like button, and go follow my social media and blog down in the description. It really helps me out. Until the next one, y'all have an incredible day, and y'all take care.